delighted to have the chance to talk to you today about the remarkable organisation that I work for and the environment in which it operates, and in particular to tell you about the justification for and the use of research in helping the club to build a global communications plan, which is my business, to allow it to engage with its supporters. When you step back and think about it, nobody by rights should have heard of a $500 million company based on the edge of an industrial estate 2 miles outside the city of Manchester, otherwise most famous for this being the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. And yet that business dominates the media, the emotions and the lives of hundreds of millions of people around the world. More than 25 times a year, it attracts a group of people larger than the population of many English towns, many of whom have travelled hundreds and in some cases thousands of miles to congregate for 2 hours to watch a game of football. It contributes greatly to the local economy, with bars, hotels, restaurants and transport companies all benefiting from our games. That is in no small part because of the illustrious past the club has both enjoyed and on occasion endured. If you were to ask me to sum up the essence of what Manchester United's appeal is in 3 words, they would be innovation, our ability to do things or make decisions before other people do; youth, the creation of an environment in which young players are given a chance to express their talent; and passion from the players, from the fans and even from our opposition. Our historic stadium at Old Trafford, now a state-of-the-art venue that celebrated its centenary 3 years ago, has played host to some memorable occasions. The magic of the Busby Babes, the first competitive matches between an English team and continental opposition, the aftermath of the tragic air crash in Munich, victorious homecomings from successful cup campaigns, and of course the remarkable trophy-laden years of Sir Alex Ferguson. It's the emotional commitment that separates sport, and particularly football, from other parts of the economy. That enthusiasm, especially during economically hard times, and the need to find an outlet to escape from the doom and gloom of the 24-hour news cycle, have provided a useful base from which sports organisations can manage their businesses, even through recession. Sport creates allegiances, and none more powerful than those in football. It speaks to us in a universal language, one that is understood from Toronto to Tokyo and from Santiago to Sydney. From the plains of Africa, where the poorest communities kick balls made of rags into makeshift goals, to the World Cup final with its manicured high-tech equipment field, the game can unite communities and involve the excluded in a way that politicians can only dream of. But we recognise that as a sport in general, and an individual club in particular, we face very strong competition from other sports in the pursuit of sponsorship revenue. Businesses are looking for tangible results, and at United we have invested heavily to prove that a relationship with our club really does deliver heightened awareness and increased sales. Key to the strategy is knowing our strengths, but the potential rewards, both in sponsorship... Sorry, I've missed a page there. There we go. If we're able to build a global communications plan that allows us regularly to speak to our fans across the world by engaging commercial partners and securing their buy-in, then we have to construct a case based on evidence. We had to integrate a communications strategy into the sponsorship expansion that our owners wanted to pursue. Research, we concluded, was essential, both a collation of what already exists in the marketplace and the creation of our own bespoke data to fill in the gaps. Making this strategy work wasn't going to be simple or cheap, but the potential rewards, both in sponsorship revenues and in the ability to talk to and reach the fans around the world, were enormous. We know that football is the global game. The World Cup final is watched by more than 3 times the viewers of any Grand Prix and over 10 times the figures achieved by the Wimbledon men's final. We know that within football, Manchester United, with its 60-plus games a year spread over 10 months, is the biggest draw outside the World Cup, which of course is only once every 4 years. Unlike previous periods of economic hardship, the sponsorship market didn't implode as many expected. What we saw is what commentators called a flight to quality. The experience of Manchester United, and indeed some of our competitors, certainly bears that out. Since the onset of the global economic downturn in 2008, our commercial revenues have risen from 64 to 152.5 million a year. Companies have to continue to market themselves in a recession. Indeed, it could be argued that the need to differentiate yourself from your competitors is heightened in a downturn. And those companies who emerge strongest from the crisis are those who have looked after their customers best. In devising this strategy, we went back to basics and defined what it is that we stand for. What does Manchester United mean to people, and is that actually different to what it is? We needed research, and lots of it, if we were going to build a meaningful basis on which to try and reach out and engage with our fans. Like our partner, Aon, we share a belief that greater insight drives stronger performance. In many ways, those of us who've known and cared about the club for a long time were not hugely surprised by the results of that exercise. Supporters feel a very strong attachment to the history and heritage of the club, to its persistence with the development of young players, its tradition of attacking flair football, the fact that the club is comfortable with its past and lets it influence the future. They even hold a perverse attraction to the team's ability to put the fans through the mill when there's a much easier way, seemingly, of achieving success. They use words like magic and greatness, and the key about those two things is they're intangible. They're subjective, and they sum up the factors that make sport different. According to research, over the course of a season, United's games are shown in over 1 billion households. Around half our games are home games, with direct exposure for club sponsors guaranteed. Televised games offer great reinforcement of that, with a global cumulative reach audience in 2011-12 of 3.2 billion, divided between those who watch the games at home, those who went to the pub or another out-of-home screening, and those who saw highlights of the games. Those viewers are located right across the world, and of course some of the viewers, especially in the UK and Europe, are, for some reason, watching the opposition as well. But as you can see from this slide, Asia is a very important part of that equation, as is Africa and the Middle East, offering significant numbers. The team's continued ability to reach the big tournaments and to progress into the latter stages helps, of course, with those figures. But the enduring global fascination of the club is not built on current success alone. The values and heritage of the club remain captivating in people's imaginations. Research by Future Sport and Entertainment concluded, in every major tournament, the most watched match always features Manchester United. What is inarguable is that in the world's #1 sport, we are its #1 club and present the #1 marketing platform for businesses. All of which is great, but in order to develop a proper global communications strategy that sponsors could buy into, we needed to quantify the fan base and identify where it lives. So a couple of years ago, we commissioned research from a respected independent company, Kantar Sport. Our data on fans was a few years out of date, and as with any business, we needed to get a better handle on where our fans are and what they want. Knowing and being able to articulate our strengths not only helps in the sales process, but means that partners are fully briefed about the capabilities of the relationship when they start, meaning that we can begin to work together immediately to reach their local Manchester United community. It's fair to say that we were staggered by the results. Over 54,000 interviews were conducted across 39 countries, and in each of those countries, a statistically significant sample gave unprompted responses. The extrapolation was that, with the continued explosion of Premier League TV coverage, extraordinary team success, and greater exposure through our global commercial deals, an estimated 659 million people now follow the club worldwide. If we overlay a map of our fan base on that of the exposure of our games overseas, there is a remarkable correlation. All of this research builds a pretty impressive CV for attracting sponsors, but it also gives us a really clear indication of how our marketing and communication strategy needs to be drawn up. Our tour of Thailand, Australia, Japan and Hong Kong last summer reaffirmed what we'd learned from the dry pages of research. Hundreds of fans screaming and singing outside each of the hotels, packed stadiums everywhere we went, and lockouts for open training sessions. And the reaction in Japan was unbelievable, not just because we have Shinji Kagawa, we expected him to be revered there, because some years before, on a visit to Korea with Ji-sung Park, we experienced a similar thing. Ji was actually not playing, he was recovering from knee surgery, and was still made man of the match by the local television station, beaming pictures of the friendly with FC Seoul around the world. I think it was just because they wanted a TV interview with him, but many might say it's not surprising because Asia has a special character of its own, particularly when it comes to football and Manchester United. But to some extent, the same is becoming true in the US, where we toured in both 2010 and 2011. Hundreds outside the hotel, sell out 50 or 60,000 plus crowds for matches against local US teams who normally attract less than 20,000. Make no mistake, soccer is growing fast in the United States, and part of our continuous improvement has to be being smart in the way we find and build a relationship with those supporters in the US. NBC have already reported huge interest in the network screenings of Premier League games this season, and having airtime on such a major broadcaster in such a big market is great for the continuing strength of the league in general, which is also good for us, and for United in particular. But of course we can't travel to Asia, Africa or the US every week. We can't even go every year, because in the years when there's a major tournament, such as this year with the World Cup, or when the UEFA European Championships are held, many of our senior players do not rejoin the squad for pre-season until late July, which is after any meaningful tour can take place. So we can only undertake a major tour every other year. In the light of that, our strategy is to try and bring Manchester United as close to fans as possible and as often as we can. And that means working with partners and working with new technology. It's about trying to capture that hysteria and give supporters occasions and experiences that allow them to touch the club as often as possible. Stretford is a long way from Shanghai and Seattle, so the deals we do have to focus on opening up those communication channels.